We begin the Gemara today and Daf Kuf Tezayin Amud Beis. Middle of the Yamud, the first word on the line is Daf Shei, Tanu Rabbanon. Talk to Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon, we learned in the Braise, Shayara, Shahaisa, Malachas B'midbar. Caravan of people that's traveling through a desert. V'amad Gayis V'tarfa. And the army came and attacked them and wanted to steal their money. V'amad Echad Man, one of the people of this caravan got up, V'hitzel, and he saved the money from this attack. So hitzel emtza, whatever he saved is not for himself. Everyone in the caravan takes what belongs to them. But ve'im amar, if this person specifically says, ani atzel atzmi, I'm going out to fight and to save our money, I'm saving for myself. So if he says that, then hitzel atzmi. Then what he saved is going to be for himself. He can keep it for himself.
Keep what?
The money, everything that he saved from all the possessions of the people that was going to be taken. So the Gemara explains, what's the difference? Why does it matter what this person says? Hey chidami, what are we talking about? I the yochel hatzel, or the other gears here, it's going on all the people here, so it should be lashon rab yochelen. If it's a case where all the other people of the caravan could have fought and saved their possessions just as much as he could have. So then I feel a sefer nami le'emtza. Even in the sefer where this person announces and says, what I'm saving is for myself, he shouldn't be able to keep it. It should belong to everyone. They're not miyayish and what belongs to them. They could have saved it for themselves anyways. So if they're not miyayish and it belongs to them, so what he's doing, just because he's saving it for them, they're not giving up on it. They're not being mafkir.
He's saying he's not saving it for them.
And chanami, but how should that help? The fact that he's saying so shouldn't make any difference. No, but it's not a matziv. The fact that they could save it themselves, it means that this is not a situation where it's lost, where it's hefker, and therefore he's being zeiche in it from an hefker. He's going and saving it. They could have done it. He decided he wants to be the nice guy and do it for it. But there's no reason that they should lose their ownership over it because of this. And if none of the other people have the ability to save it, which basically means that they're being attacked and their stuff is already lost, it's gone. And it's only this person that has that ability to go and save it. Then, what that basically means is that this is already something which they were miyayish and it's hefker. So then I feel it reisha, nami, even in the reisha of this braisa, where he doesn't make this announcement that I'm saving for myself. So la'atzmai, he should still keep it for himself because it's lost, it's gone. He's being zeich in it mina hefker for himself. So the Gemara gives three pshatim for this. Amar Rami Bava Kama, so Rami Bava Kama explains one pshat. The case we're speaking about over here is there's no difference whether he could save it for himself or he can't. They could save it themselves or they can't. Here the case is hacha b'shutfim askinon. These are people in the caravan, they're all partners in these possessions that they have. This is an example of a case where shutuf chaylik shaloi l'das chaverei, where a partner has the right to cut his partnership, to separate his ownership, even without the agreement of his friends. Usually, if you want to stop the partnership, you have to have the agreement of the other partner. But this is a case where you can do it even without the das of your friend. And therefore, Omar, if this person says clearly that he's saving it for himself, then polik. So then he's separating from his friend. And therefore, whatever he's saving, he saves for himself. He takes for himself because there's no more partnership over here anymore. So whatever he saves, he's able to keep for himself. Lo yomar, but if this person did not say that in advance, he didn't say that he's saving for himself, then loy polik. So then the partnership still remains, and therefore whatever he saved, he didn't save for himself. He's saving for everybody. That's the derech. Rashi says that's the derech of a partner. When a person saves something, he can't say, "Oh, because I saved it all, so I saved it all for me." No, a partner will be mishtadel and save everything that's owned by the partners. So therefore, even after he saved it, it still belongs to the other people. You still split it, and everybody takes their part in the partnership. So that's what we're talking about over here. A situation of partners, whether this person is splitting off from the partnership, and therefore whatever he saves, I'm saving something that belongs to you, and I'm not a partner with you anymore. So if I'm saving it, so then I'm saving for myself. Or if we're still partners, then the derech of a partner is that since there's a partnership here, whatever he saves is still, the partnership didn't stop, so he's still saving for his partner. It's one pshat. Rava says another pshat. We're talking over here about a case where it's a person that's a worker. He's hired to work for his master. And this is a kind of worker that's not hired for a specific job. He's hired to work whatever he earns, whatever he does, goes to the master that he works for. And so over here, what's the difference if this person says befedish that he's saving for himself or not? If he's a worker, no matter what he saves for the people of the caravan, should go to the people that he's working for them. This is a person that's hired by the people of this caravan. Whatever he does is for them. So whatever he saves should be for them. So why does it help if he says, I'm saving for myself? So the answer is a Rav. This is based on something that Rav said. No, Rav said, there's a special halacha b'negei to a yid that's hired as a worker, that he's allowed to retract from the job that he's doing in the middle of the day. He didn't finish his job. He's allowed to walk out from his job. He only gets paid for what he did, but he's allowed to back out from his job in the middle. So so over here, in this case, if this person that's a worker for these other people here, if he doesn't say anything that I'm saving for myself, so then whatever he does, when he goes and saves this money, he's saving it for the people that he's working for. So the balabai is dummy. And that's whatever he does, he's doing it for the balabas, the people that he's working for them. So whatever he saves is lamtzas for them. However, if he announces and he comes and says that I'm saving for myself, what he's basically saying is, even though I'm your worker, but I retract from this, he sees an opportunity where he could save for himself. So he has charata from this and he wants to save for himself. And over here, the reason why it works is, there's a different reason. And by a yid, a worker, the reason is the pasuk says, "Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim, v'lo yavadim la'avodim." The yidin are slaves for Hashem, and we're not slaves for another slave, for another yid, that is. Which means a worker he's still an independent person. A worker does not become an eved, where you're owned by your master, and once you're hired for a job, you can't back out. You're a worker, but you have the right to back out at any time. So therefore over here, when he announces and says clearly that he's saving for himself, he's backing out from his position of being a worker for them, and he can save for himself. Ravashi says the third pshat, what we're talking about over here, the case over here is the other people also have the ability to save their money from these guys, from these bandits that are attacking them, but it would be very difficult for them. It's not so simple for them to save it. So therefore, in the case of Goli Daite, when this person makes an announcement and makes it clear that I want to save for myself, and the other people in the caravan heard this, they have the ability, with difficulty, but they have the ability to go and save it for themselves. And they heard that he says he wants to save for himself. Once he made that announcement, and they're quiet, and they allow him to go save for himself, Latzma, he can keep it for himself. Because the fact that they're being quiet and they're allowing him to do this shows that they're meichel. They could have saved it themselves with difficulty. The fact that they were quiet and decided to allow him, that's because they didn't want to go through this tirche. So then they're meichel. They keeps it for himself. However, if he doesn't make it clear to the people that his plan is that he's coming to save it for himself, so over here you can't say that because they were quiet, therefore they were meichel. He never told them that he's planning on saving it for himself. Over here, maybe they would want to work hard. Maybe they didn't want to work hard and save it for themselves. Therefore, if he goes ahead and saves it, it's still going to belong to everybody because maybe they would have worked hard to save it for themselves, and we still say that they all have a right to it. It's not lost from them. A person stole a property from his friend. In other words, he possessed the property. And now masikim, which are bandits or thugs that come along and confiscated this property from this ganav. Now, in Makis Medinahi, if these masikin that attack people and throw them out of their property is not something that was done just to this Goslin here, but this is a Makis Medina, that they're going and attacking and grabbing away properties from many people in the country. So then, he can say to the owner, here, your property is where it is, and go and take it as is. And so the fact that the masikin came now and possessed it is not something which is the Goslin's responsibility to kick them out, even though it happened after he stole it. This is a Makkis Medina, has nothing to do with him. And therefore he just tells the owner here, take it as is. However, if the masikin are here in the property because of the Goslan, and the Gemara will explain what this means, then it's going to be the responsibility of the Goslin to reimburse him, either to get these masikin out of this property or to pay him the value, the money of this property that the masikin, these thugs, are now possessing this property. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said about this expression of masikin. They what?
He has to get him another sadeh.
Yeah, or he pays him, so he pays him for it. He gets him another sadeh, money or another sadeh. Okay. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, man the tani masikin, the one that is guided in the Mishnah, the word masikin, as we have it in our Mishnah, loy mishtabish, is not making a mistake. Oman the Tani Matzikin, one that learns in our Mishnah the Gersa with a tzaddik, Matzikin also le mishtabish, is not making a mistake. Why? Man the Tani Matzikin, Matzikin means a person that comes and oppresses you. He's le mishtabish, he's not making a mistake. The Chsiv, as the pasuk says, b'matzer u b'matzik, you've been placed in a siege and under oppression in this siege. So over here, this is people that came and stole people's property. They were called Matzikin. The Tani Masikim with a samech, loy mishtavish is not making a mistake. D'chsiv yorash hatzlotzal. Tzotzal is a kind of grasshoppers that come and destroy your property. So sakah goes on these grasshoppers, and therefore they were called masikin, like grasshoppers that come and destroy and confiscate your property. What did the Mishnah say? If these masikin came and possessed your property, and this is because of this gazlan, then it's your responsibility to reimburse the owner for this. What does this mean? Says the Gemara, what's the case here? If the case over here is like it would sound like the simple pshat of the Mishnah, these masikin, they have something against this particular gazlan, and therefore they came and they confiscate his property that he has. Now, they did not come and confiscate anybody else's property. Just as Gazlan, they attacked and they possessed this property. And then it's going to be the Gazlan's responsibility. You stole this property, and it's because of you now that this property got possessed by these Masikin. So you should reimburse the owner for this. Says the Gemara, that can be the chiddush of what the Reisha is saying, because this would be already self-understood from what it says in the Reisha of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, the Mishnah spelled out, if it's a makas medina, if the fact that Masik can attack and possess this property is nothing to do with this Gazlan, it's just that they do this in the country now, so then you're not responsible. So from what it says in the Reisha of the Mishnah, that it's self-understood that if it's not a makas medina, but it's something that's these masikin have something specifically with this gazlan, so then it is going to be this gazlan's responsibility. Why is the Mishnah spelling this out? Im machmas hagazlan. The Mishnah could have just said bekitzer. The Mishnah could have just said these words, im loy, and then he's going to be responsible. The fact that the Mishnah says a whole other line, im machmas hagazlan chayiv, it's mashma that there's a new halacha that the Mishnah is teaching here. So what is this new halacha that it's teaching? Says the Gemara, two pshat in the Gemara says. One pshat is the case over here is the achve achvuye. This is not a case where the Gazlan already stole this property. The case over here is, here's a Gazlan, we refer to him as a Gazlan. It's a person that knows that the king, the government, is looking to confiscate someone's property, and this person goes and tells the government, here, this is a good property, you should go and confiscate, go possess this property. So he's leading the government to this person's property, or these masikin to this person's property, and they go and they confiscate this person's property. So he caused the people to come and confiscate this property. He's going to be responsible to pay for this. This is garmi. The mother will soon say, this is what's called garmi. You didn't directly do the damage, but you are the direct cause of this damage, and you're chayav for this. It's one pshat. Another pshat over here is, the case over here is, we are speaking about a case where he already stole this property before. And the case is, there were these goyim that came and were forcing him to give up from his properties for them. They told this person, show us your properties, and they were going to take it from him. And this person, he didn't only show his own properties to these goyim, but he also showed this property that he stole from this person along with his properties. So why did he do that? He didn't have to. They weren't forcing him to show someone else's property that he stole. They were forcing him to show them his own properties that they wanted to steal and possess. So why did he show the other person's property? So therefore, he's also going to be chayav for this. Talk to Gemara how gavra that is. It was an individual. The achve akarye the chite the beresh galusa. That he showed these masikin that here come and grab the karye the chite, this pile of grain of wheat from the reish galusa. Like the first answer that the Gemara just gave here in the pshat of our Mishnah. Also came to Rav Nachman. So from the people from the reish galusa now came to Rav Nachman to get reimbursed for what this person did. That he should pay them back for showing these masikin to confiscate this pile of wheat. So Rav Nachman obligated this person to pay for showing them. Rav Yosef was sitting behind Rav Huna Bar Chia. Rav Huna Bar Chia came to Rav Nachman, and Rav Huna Bar Chia was sitting in front of Rav Nachman. Rav Huna Bar Chia tells Rav Nachman about this. Dine oiknosa. The psak that you just said, that they have to reimburse, is this min hadin based on garmi, as I mentioned before, or knas, or maybe it's just a penalty, maybe because this person was someone that did this more than once, and therefore Rav Nachman felt that he deserves a knas, but min hadin you wouldn't be mechayiv him. Amalei, so I answered him, this is minadin, masnisani. This is what we learned in our Mishnah here. The first chat we said before. The Mishnah said, Imachmas hagazlan, chayiv lahamad loisadeh. If the gazlan went and showed someone, here, confiscate this person's property, then you have to reimburse him. Vaikim, now we explained, that the case over here is that you showed someone, you showed the masikin, or the government, you showed that you could confiscate this person's property. That's what Rav Nachman said. Basa the Nafak, after Rav Nachman left, Amalei Rav Yosef le Rav Huna bar Chiya. So Rav Yosef tells Rav Huna bar Chiya, "My nafkalach mina. What difference does it make to you, idine iknasa? Whether the psak din to pay that Rav Nachman paskined, was it meikra din or was it just a penalty? What difference does it make? The payal he has to pay." Amalei. So Rav Huna answered him. What was this over here? Rav Huna bar Chiya answered and said the difference is as follows. If this is Meikar Adin, then Gamrina Mine. We can compare and learn out from here to other cases that the same should apply. Iknase, but if it's just a knas, like Gamrina Mine, then we can't learn out from here. So you wanted to know, are you paskening that this is a case of Garmi, and if it's a case of Garmis and any other case compared to this, you'd be chayiv? Or this is not your direct fault, and the fact that they came and actually confiscated this property, you wouldn't be chayiv for this, but it's just a knas. Says the Gemara, from where do we know this concept? When we see in a specific kind of a case that Chachamim imposed the knas, you can't compare and learn from there to another case that seems to be similar that you would impose a knas. It's only that case where Chachamim instituted the knas where it applies, and you don't compare it to any other case. Where do we see this? The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, Bari Shaina, in the beginning, Chachamim would say, Hametame v'hamenasech, that somebody that goes and makes tame, someone's produce, and now it loses its value because of this, he can't eat it. And the only thing that we're talking over here about, something that it was metame, so it has less of a value, and a menasech, and then you go, or you take person's wine, and you pour it for avodah zarah, so it's yain nesach, and it also becomes also to use. In these cases, this is not a kind of a hezek that you chayiv min ha-Torah, because this is a hezek shein and nicker, but Chachamim made a knas, but you still chayiv to pay for this. That was the first knas Chachamim instituted. Then later on, chazru loima, they instituted furthermore, af hamadameya. The same is also if you take the truma and you mix it together with chulin, so now your chulin produce that you could have sold to any yid for its full value loses a certain value now. Because it's mixed together with truma, the only person you could sell this produce that's mixed together with truma is to a kohen. So you could only charge him a cheaper price because not everybody could buy this. So they came, Chachamim instituted that's also a kind of a hezek which is ein and nicker, and there's a knas, you have to pay for that again. That's what it says in the Braise. So what do you see over here? There was two stages. First, Chachamim said Yechayev a knas for one kind of hezek shein and nicker, and then Chazru. Later on, they instituted Yechayev for medameya as well. Says the Gemara, Chazru in, because later Chachamim came and added the knas in this case, therefore it applies. LeChazru loy. But if they wouldn't come and make this knas on the case of midameya, when you mix the chulin and truma, then the knas would not apply here. My time, what's the reason? Why shouldn't it apply? Why shouldn't we compare that it's a similar thing? You're being mazik someone's possessions, even if it's not noticeable, but it's a similar thing. Why don't we compare this? Lav, don't you think the reason is mishum the knasahu? Because this payment here, the Chachamim instituted in this case, is all a knas. Knas like gamrina minay. We don't compare with a knas. We can't compare from one scenario to another. Says the Gemara Loi, that's not the reason why Chachamim had to institute specially a knas for the case of midameya. Because meikare, in the beginning, when they didn't include the case of midameya, mixing the cholon with the trumeh, savri, they held lahefsed meruba chashashu. When there's a big damage, that's what Chachamim were concerned of, and they made a knas for that. Lahefsed muet lechashashu. But if it's a smaller damage, Chachamim weren't concerned of this. By midameya, it's less of a damage, because when you mix the cholon with the trumeh, it doesn't lose its value altogether. You could still sell it to a kohen. You lose the value, the price. You could only sell it to a kohen for a cheaper price because it's not in the open market where anyone could buy it. But there's a smaller hefsed. So therefore, over there, they didn't impose the knas. So it's not the same case. The reason you don't compare is not because it's a knas, because it's just a less of a damage. Well, then Chachamim thought, and they instituted, they were concerned even about a smaller damage, which is in a case where you mix the truma and the cholin. But the Gemara now asks him this, is it's not true that once there's a knas in one case, we don't compare to another case. But we have another Braise that discussed this subject, or Bava Oven over here discussed this subject, and he said it differently. The father of Rabavin, he said as follows. Bari Shaina, in the beginning, Chachamim instituted Hametame v'Hamedameya. if you metamis someone's produce, or you mix his chulin and truma, that for those, there's a knas that you have to pay for this damage. Then chazru loymar, then later, they added and they said, afa menasach. When you take someone's wine and you pour it for avodah zarah, you have to pay for that as well. So here, according to this version, the first institution that they said to pay was metame medameya, and only afterwards menasach. So again, the Gemara says, what do you see? Chazru in, because they instituted this again, therefore you have to pay now. Like chazru loy, if they wouldn't clearly say later that you have to pay for menasach as well, you wouldn't have to pay. My time, what's the reason for this distinction? Lav mishum delay gamrina miknasa. Don't you think the reason is because we can't learn out from a case of knas? So the Gemara again, no. Loy, that's not the reason. Menasech is different. It stands out separately, and there was a different reason why originally the Chachamim did not institute to pay for pouring a person's wine and making it yayin nesach. Why? So the Gemara explains like this. Here, the Gemara is going to bring up the subject of kom le b'derabimine. When you pour wine for avodah zarah, you're serving avodah zarah. So you chayiv misa for this. So here, you could bring in the svar of kamle b'derabimine, where it patters you of any payment, and therefore Chachamim would not institute a knas in this case. And the Gemara explains. In the beginning, they didn't institute that from a nasach you should be chayiv because they held like Rab Oven. The Gemara will in a moment will explain what Rab Oven said. But in the end, they changed their opinion and they held like what Rab Yirmiyah said. What does this mean? In the beginning, they held like what Rab Oven said regarding Kamle b'derabimine, when a person is machal Shabbos, and during the Chilul Shabbos, he also damages someone's garment. What is the case here? The Amar Abavan said as follows: Zarak chetz mitchilas arba lebesayf arba. You throw an arrow in the Rishus Rabim 4 amas, which is the Chilul Shabbos. You chayiv misa for this, and then the kodesh shirayim ba'al lichasei. On its way, the arrow is flying. It also ripped someone's garment. Pater, you'll be pater to pay for that garment. And now the chiddush of what Rab Oven is saying here, as the Gemara will explain now, Kamle b'derabimine only applies in the case where the chi of misa and the chi of mammon are at the same moment. Then you say that the chi of misa paters you from the chi of mammon. But if it's at different times, so then there's no Kamle b'derabimine. So over here you can argue he's only chayav for the Chil Shabbos when this arrow lands by the Hanocha. And it tore the person's garment on its way when it was flying. After it was up, it was the Akira, in the middle of it flying, it tore someone's garment. So the Chi of Mammon is while it's flying, and the Chilul Shabbos is only after it lands. So why should you apply Kamle b'derabimine over here? So Rab Oven explained, Share Akira tzarech hanochi. It's considered to be all one thing, because you pick up the arrow, you throw it, it's for the purpose of where it's going to end up landing, where it's going to fly and land. So therefore, even if it rips while it's flying, it's considered to be, as it happened, the same time as the Chilul Shabbos after it lands. And therefore, Mischayev benafshay, so he's chayev misa at the same time that he damages this person's garment, so he's potter. Okay, so now, the Gemara is saying here that you could compare it to our case of pouring the yayin nesach. A person steals this wine. He picks up someone's wine, and then he pours it down to the avodah zarah. So over here also, you could argue and say that the chi of misa, of serving avodah zarah, only happens later, when he pours it to the avodah zarah. The chi of mammon is when he picks up the wine, but the gzela, that's when he's chayiv for this wine that he picked up from this person. So it's not exactly the same time where there's the chi of mammon and the chi of misa. But in the beginning, the Chachamim held like the Svar of Rab Oven, even though it's not exactly at the same time, but he picked it up with the purpose of going and pouring it for Avodah Zarah, and he ended up pouring it for Avodah Zarah. It's considered to be one long thing. And therefore, it's like the same time where you chayiv the Misa and you chayiv Mammon. So therefore, in the beginning, Chachamim did not want to impose a knas in such a case where there's Kamle b'derabimine. In the end, they retracted and they held like what Rabbi Yirmiyah said. It's considered to be 2 different times. Rabbi Yirmiyah said here, when he picks up the wine, he's kind of this wine, meaning he's stealing it, and for this he has to pay. So he has to pay for this. But you're not chayiv for the avodah zarah, the chi of misa, until you pour the wine. So it's 2 separate times. So there's no kamle b'derabimine, and therefore Chachamim instituted the knas. So over here, the point the Gemara is saying is, you can't say, or you don't have to say, that Chacham did not want to institute a knas because we don't compare from one case to another when it comes to knas. Over here, there's a specific reason why, originally by Menasach, they didn't want to make the knas. Okay, the Gemara now goes back to the original subject regarding a case where a person is showing someone else's property, or when get to the case of Masikin. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna bar Yehuda ikla lebei Avyeni. Rav Huna bar Yehuda found himself in the city of Avyeni. Also lekamei de Rave. So Rave came in front of him, Amalei, and said to him, Klum maise bali yotcha. Was there any story that came to your hands that you could share with me, a certain psaktin that you paskind? Amalei, so he said, yeah, I paskind as follows. Yisrael sha'ansu oivdei kechavim. A case of a yid that Goyim came and forced him to show him a property that they can take for themselves. And he showed his friend's property. They go take this property. So Bali Yali, that's the case that came to my hands. And I told this yid that showed his friend's property because Goyim were forcing him to show. So I was mechayiv him to pay for this. Amalei. So Rav says to him, "Ahado of the lamare." You should go back on this story over here. In other words, return the money to its owner. The fact that you made him pay for this, that he was forced, and he showed his friend's property, he doesn't have to pay for this. Why not? The Tanya, because we learned in Abraisa as follows: Yisrael shansu oivdei a yid that's being forced by Goyim to do this. The head of Mama Chavere, in order to save his life, he goes and he shows his friend's money to these Goyim potter. So he's potter to pay for this. Ve'im notal v'nosam biyad. However, if he himself goes and the Goyim are forcing him, and he goes and brings an object with his own hands to these Goyim, then chayev. Even though he saved himself, and he's allowed to save himself to do this. You don't have to put your life, you don't have to die for the sake, but yeah, you saved yourself. But later, since you brought it by hand to this guy, so then you're going to have to pay for this. So over here, in this case, in the story that Rav Huna bar Yehuda paskin, it wasn't a case where this person took it with his own hands. So therefore, he's not responsible to pay for this. Amar Rabbe, so Rabbe said, Im here meyatzmai, if it's a case where the person was not being forced by Goyim, he just went on his own and showed Masikin or the government, here, this is a property you can go and confiscate without being forced to do so. This is like when you carried something with your own hands and brought it to a guy. This is the case that the Gemara said before in the Mishnah, when you go and you show on your own without being forced, and that's what the Mishnah said, that you'd be chayiv for this. So the Gemara, there was a case of a person, the guy enforced him, and he went and showed them where he can take, why they can go and take from the wine of Rav Mari. Amalei, the Goyim then told him, Dari vamti badan, come and carry the wine together with us. Dari vamti badai, he went and carried the wine for these Goyim. Also, so then they came to Rav Ashi to ask Rav Ashi. So he saved himself from these Goyim by showing the wine of Rav Mari. And he also carried it for them. And when they came to Rav Ashi and asked whether he has to reimburse them, patrine. He parted him of paying for this. Amalei Rabban Rav Ashi, so Rabban asked Rav Ashi, why did you part him? But Vatanya, didn't we learn in the Braise? It says you're allowed to save yourself, but that's only, but im nasan v'nasan biyad. But if you went and carried with your own hands and gave it to these Goyim, then chayiv, then you are chayiv for this. So here he carried the wine with his own hands. Amalei, so Rav Ashi answered, it depends how this happens. When do you say that if he goes and carries with his own hands and brings it to the guy, that's only if you didn't show them in advance where this object of your friend is. You just they were forcing you, and you went and brought the object to these Goyim. So in such a case, when you brought it to them, you're going to be responsible for this. In a case where you show them the wine, in this case, they saw that they're there, they see the wine already, and they're just asking this yid to help them carry it. In such a case, mikle kalya, it's already like it was burnt. Once the Goyim already see the wine and they're there, and you're just helping them out, it's something that's already lost from the owner. The fact that you're picking up and helping them is already after the fact that they're standing there and they saw it. You're picking it up with your hands. You're not picking up from your friend. It already doesn't belong to your friend anymore. It's already like lost and gone. So Rabavo asked Rav Ashi, from what it says in the Braise, Amaloi Anos. An Anos, person that's forcing this yid, comes and tells the guy, Hoishutli Pekia Omerzeh, hand me over this bundle of straw, or this grapes, a cluster of grapes you should hand me. And you grabbed it, you took it from your friend, and you gave it for these Goyim. Chayiv, so the Braise over here says, you will be chayiv. So it seems like over here it's speaking in a case where the Goyim saw this, and they were standing right there. So it's already lost from your friend. And you went and handed it to them. And nevertheless, the Braise says, as long as you handed it to them with your hands, you're going to be chayiv to pay for this. And says the Gemara, over there, no, the Goyim did not have any access to it. The case there was, the Goyim that were forcing him to give him these grapes, or whatever it was, they were on the other side of a river. And you brought it to them. So in such a case, if you brought it to them by hand and the Goyim did not have access to it on their own, even though you're allowed to save yourself, if they're threatening to kill you, but nevertheless after that you have to pay for this. The Kanami, we can also see this in the words of this Braisa, the Ktonika, the Braisa says, Hoishit, that you handed it over to them. V'loitani 10. They told him, hand it over to us, which is mashma, they couldn't take it on their own. It doesn't just say, give it to us. Shema Mino, so we see that that's the case over here. So Gemara, Hahu Shuse. There was this trap that was used to trap animals, or maybe fish. Two people were arguing about this trap, who it belongs to. Hayama Didiu, one person says it's mine, Hayama Didiu, the other person says it's mine. And no one has any proof that it says, and they're just arguing about it. One of them went, and he showed and he gave it over to the government representative of the king, a tax collector that gave it to them. So now he sort of confiscated it, but not for himself, but by giving it over to this representative. Abaye says, what I gave to this tax collector, it's mine, it belonged to me. So therefore, I'm not paying you for the fact that before we said you show a tax collector something from your friend, you have to pay him for that. But over here, they were arguing about it, and there was no raya who it belongs to. In such a case, he says, I gave it to him, and therefore, I'm patur to pay you for this. This is really a case where the halacha, what would be the halacha otherwise over here, when two people are arguing over something and no one has any raya? The halacha would really be kol dolam gavar. Each one can go and grab it, whoever's stronger. So over here, instead of him grabbing it for himself, he didn't go to Bezdin, he just went and gave it over to a tax collector. So Abai says he's patur. Amalei Rava says, V'chol kimine, does this person have the right to do this? He didn't go to Bezdin, he didn't stop, he went and grabbed it and gave it to the tax collector. Elam Rava, so therefore Rava says, Mishamtinanle, we excommunicate this individual for doing this, Adamaisile, until he'll retrieve it, Vikoi Bedina, and he comes properly to the Bezdin, and let the Bezdin paskin. So the Bezdin will paskin afterwards, that the halacha is kol dolam gavar, fine, but you can't just go and give it over to a tax collector. The Bezdin has to paskin. There was a person that wanted to go and show a property of his friend to someone, to grab it from him. Asivne, again, it goes together here. He wanted to show the straw or the wheat of his friend to somebody, to steal and grab. So he was in front of Rav and he told Rav what he's planning on doing. Amalei, Rav warned this individual and said, no, you're not allowed. Don't show him and don't show him. Amalei, this person said, machvina. No, I am. I'm going to go and show this that the people can grab it away from my friend. Yosef Rav Kahana kamed Rav. Rav Kahana was sitting in front of Rav. Shamte lekue. He broke his neck and he killed this individual for this chutzpah that he had in front of Rav. Kari Rav ilavei. So Rav said regarding what Rav Kahana did, the following pasuk where it says, "Vanayich ulfu shachvu bereish kol chutzes kisay michmar." Your children are lying outside kisay michmar. Kisay michmar mean, what does this mean? My soy, this soy is an ox. My soy is just like this ox. Kivin shenafal b'michmar. Once he falls into the trap, michmar is a trap. Once he's trapped, the people that trap this ox have no mercy on this ox. Half mamash Yisrael, same as with the money of Yidden. Once the Goyim come to confiscate a person's money, they have no rachmanis on this person himself. So therefore, the point that the Gemara is saying over here is that what Rav Kahana did was correct. The fact that he killed this person. Because the fact that he said he is going to show the money of his friend that they should be, Goyim should confiscate it, that means that he's ready to put his friend's life in danger. He has the din of a roidif. So therefore, the fact that you're killing this, that Rav Kahana went and killed this person, which is a roidif, was a right, al pidin. You're allowed to kill a roidif. That's what Rav explained to him. Now, Amalei Rav, however, Rav then said to Rav Kahana, my student Kahana, until now, have a parsoi. It was the Persians that were in control over here. They are not particular when there's a situation of murder that happens. They weren't particular about this, and so they wouldn't be after you. But now the ones that are in charge here are the Yevonim, the Kaptesh Shvichas Damim. They are very particular about murder. And V'amri, when they hear about a case of murder, they scream and they say, Meradim, Meradim, there's a murder here, they're going to come to arrest you. So therefore, kum sak la'ad Yisrael, go and flee to Eretz Yisrael. You come to Eretz Yisrael, who was the biggest Tana over there that was teaching Torah in Eretz Yisrael? Rabbi Yechanan. The Kibbul Alach, accept upon yourself the Letikshil Rabbi Yechanan Shev Vashnin. You shouldn't ask any questions to Rabbi Yechanan for 7 years. Accept what he says without questioning him for 7 years. The Mashari says that this was a kapara for Rav Kahana, because even though Rav said what he did was right, that he killed this person, but nevertheless there was something that he did that was incorrect, that he did this without asking Rav. In front of his teacher Rav, he just went and took action on his own and killed this individual without asking. So therefore his kapara is, you come to Eretz Yisrael, you learn from Rabbi Yechanan, don't challenge him, don't ask him any questions. Azali came to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechei Reish Lakish. He found Reish Lakish, which was from the greatest students, or even a colleague of Rabbi Yechanan that was learning by Rabbi Yechanan. The Yosef, he was sitting, the Kamisayim Mesifte, the Yaime L'Rabbanan, and he was repeating and explaining the halachas that Rabbi Yechanan taught that day in the shir to the students. Okay, so he came late and he saw what was happening there, and Reish Lakish already finished saying over the shir. Amaluhu, so he wanted to go and speak with Reish Lakish. So he says to the students, Reish Lakish heicha. Where did Reish Lakish go? I want to speak to him. Amrulei Amai, why do you need Reish Lakish? Amaluhu, so he said to them, Hi Kushya, I have this question and I have this question, and V'hai Piruke, and I have these answers. And he wants to discuss all of this with Reish Lakish. They told Reish Lakish that, about what Rav Kahana said, the questions and the answers he has. Oh, so Reish Lakish went. Rabbi Yechanan, he tells Rabbi Yechanan, Ari Allah mi Bavel, a lion in learning came up from Bavel. So when you give your shir tomorrow in the yeshiva, you should be very prepare well, that you should know what you're saying well, because he's going to ask you questions. So Lamacha came the next day. Bava Kama Rabbi Yechanan. They put Rav Kahana in the front row in front of Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan said a halacha. He didn't ask any questions. Shmaita said, Rabbi Yechanan said another halacha. He didn't ask any questions. Why? Because he was following the orders that Rav told him not to ask any questions. So they put him now into the back row. And there was 7 rows in front of Rabbi Yechanan. They put him at the back row. So each time Rabbi Yechanan said Allah and he wasn't asking questions, they kept on putting him in a further row back until he was all the way at the back, in the back row of the 7 rows. Rabbi Yechanan turned out to Reish Lakish and said, Arisha Amarta, this lying that you said that he's going to challenge me in the halachas that I'm teaching, Nasa Shul, he became a fox. He's not challenging me at all. So now Rav Kahana was really urging, he wanted to ask a question. So he said, Omar, Yehirava, it should be the will of Hashem, Dahani Sheva Dori, these 7 rows that I was put here in the back, and I was embarrassed by this, that they put me 1 row and a further row all the way to the back, Lehav Echil of Sheva Shana. This should be in exchange for the 7 years that Rav told me not to speak up. Damali Rav, that Rav told me. So then, Koma Kare, he got up on his feet, and Amalei, Nahadamar Bereisha. He says to Rabbi Yechanan, could you say over again the halacha that you said from the beginning? Rabbi Yechanan said the first halacha, v'akshe, and he asked him a question on it. So Bava Kama, he asked such a question. They brought him back to the first row. Rabbi Yechanan said another halacha, v'akshe, and he asked him again a question on it. So the Gemara explains what happens here. Rabbi Yechanan, Havi Yosef, Asheve Bastaki. Rabbi Yechanan was sitting on 7 mats that were under him, or 7 little rugs below him, carpets, rugs that were below him. That's the kind of chair that he was sitting on. So every time he asked a question, they took out 1 rug from below him. Said another halach and he asked another question. This happened 7 times. They removed all the rugs that he was sitting on, and now the Yosef al Ara till Rabbi Yechanan was sitting on the ground. Rabbi Yechanan and Gavra Sabav. Rabbi Yechanan was already old at that time. And his eyelashes were very, very long, and they were covering his eyes. Amalahu, so he didn't see Rav. He was covering his eyes. He didn't even see Bichlal. So he didn't see Rav Kahana. So he said to his students, "Dolali einai, pick up the eyelashes from my eye, va'achzi, and I'll see Rav Kahana." Dolale b'mekachalte de kaspa. So his students came with a silver utensil and they picked up his eyelashes. Chaza, so with his eyesight, he saw the parte sifvase, that his lips were split. What really was Rav Kahana had a certain split in his lips. So he saw his lips were split open. Savar, Rabbi Yechanan thought, achuch kamachaychbe, that Rav Kahana is standing and smirking or laughing at him, at Rabbi Yechanan, that he asked him all these questions and he couldn't give an answer. Cholash daite, Rabbi Yechanan felt very bad about this, and as a result, v'noch nafshe, Rav Kahana died because of the fact that he hurt Rabbi Yechanan by laughing in front of him, or at least that's what Rabbi Yechanan thought, but really he wasn't. Really, it was just a split that he had in his lips. Lamacha, the next day, Amalahu, Rabbi Yechanan Rabbanon. Rabbi Yechanan says to the students, Chazisu lebavla, did you see this person that came from Bavel, Heichi Avid, what he did? That he came and he was smirking him in my face when he asked me these questions. Amrulei, so they said to Rabbi Yechanan, Darke Hachi. Now this is the way he looks always. It's because of the split that he has in his lips. He wasn't chas v'shalom smirking in front of you. So he felt very bad about this. Aligabe Marta, he went up to the cave in the place where he was buried. Chaza, he saw the Havahadra Leachna. There was a snake that was there surrounding his cave that you couldn't enter, and the snake was surrounding it, and it had its tail, or the end of the snake was in the mouth, huh? Yeah, the tail. Okay, the tail was in the mouth of the snake, blocking the entry. Amalei, so Rabbi Yechanan speaks to the snake and says, Achna, my snake, psach pumech, open up your mouth, release your tail so I can enter here. V'yikonas harav etzel talmud, and let the teacher go in to the student that's buried here, of Kahana that's buried here. V'loi pasach, the snake did not open its mouth. Then he said, Yikonas chaver etzel chaver, let a friend go into the cave where the friend is buried. V'loi pasach, he still didn't open his mouth. So then Rabbi Yechanan said, Yikonas talmud etzel harav, let the student go to the teacher. Then pasach, the snake opened its mouth and he was able to enter into the cave. Rabbi Yechanan davened Hashem and begged mercy, and he brought him up. Rabbi Yechanan said to Rav Kahana, if I would have known that this is the way your lips look, and it's not that you were smirking at me, I wouldn't have felt bad about this. So now come back to us, come back in the Besmedish to learn with us. Amalei, Rav Kahana said, if you could ask and daven b'at Hashem, that this shouldn't happen again, I shouldn't die again because you'll feel bad about something that I say, azilna, then I'll go with you. But v'iloi, azilna, if not, I'm not going to go with you. Since the time of this miracle that happened once, already happened once, and I'm not going to rely on this happening again, so therefore I'm not going to come with you. So the Gemara says, Tairei, he woke him up from his death, Oikmei, and he was standing, and he brought him into the Besmedrish, and Shaile Kol Sveika. Rabbi Yechanan asked by Rav Kahana all of his questions that he had, the Havale. Upashtinuna Alei, and he answered all the questions for Rabbi Yechanan. And Hainu Da'amar Rabbi Yechanan, after this is what Rabbi Yechanan said about this. Duluchayin Amri. Till now I thought that it's the one amongst you. He told his students, I thought that all the sources of the halachas come from the ones amongst you here in Eretz Yisrael. And he said that from Bavel, from the people of Bavel, you can't learn anything. But now I say, Dilahoinhi. The Torah belongs by the people over there that are in Bavel. The Torah comes from them. As I see here, Rav Kahana came from the people in Bavel. Okay, let's just learn a little bit more over here. We're not going to finish the whole thing today, but let's see one more story over here. There was an individual, coming back to the story we spoke about before, an individual went and showed to a guy where you can go and take jewelry that belonged to Rababa. So he wasn't being forced, he went and showed this. Yosef Rabava, Rab Chanina, Bar Papi, Rab Yitzchak Nafche, so these three Amiram were sitting together. Yosef Rabbi Law, Gabayu, and Rabbi Law was sitting along with them. Savr L'chiyuve, he thought as a source to be Machayev this person for the fact that he showed someone to take the jewelry of Rababa, that his source would be Mahadet Nan. From the following mission that we learned that says, Dones Adin, a person that's paskening a din in a bezdin, and they made a mistake in the Psak Halacha. Zika Sachayev, the one that was supposed to be chayiv, he pater him, or the chayiv is a zakai, the one that was supposed to be pater, he was mechayiv him. Tima is atar, something that was supposed to be tar, was matam, or the opposite, v'tir is atame. We had details about this before earlier in the Masechta here. So the Mishnah there says, Masha'asa, I'll see what's done is done, and v'yishalom mibesa. But this judge here that paskened wrong, he has to reimburse this person that now has a loss because of his psak din. So what you see over here is just based on your words that you paskened wrongly. That's called garmi. So you directly cause this damage, so you have to pay for this. So you show a guy to go and confiscate your friend, in this case of Abba's jewelry, you have to pay for this. But Rabbi Law says that Mishnah is not a good source, because Rav said about that Mishnah, that's only if you went and carried, when you paskin the din, you went and carried that person's object and gave it back to someone else, then you're going to be chayiv. In the Gemara, we had Rashi before explained regarding all these cases how it applies. That he went and did it by hand. That's the only time that you're chayiv. But over here, this person didn't go by hand and take the jewelry and gave it to this guy. Amrilei, so they said to Rabbabe, Zilagabe de Rab Shimon ben Elyokim, Rab Elazar ben Pedos, the Daini Dine de Garmi. We know that they paskin that you are chayiv to pay for a case of Garmi when someone causes a direct damage, even if he doesn't do it by hand. So go to him and they'll paskin that they'll be chayiv. Azul Gabayu, they went to them, and chayiv Mimasnis, and he says he's chayiv based on the Mishnah that we learned before. And the pshat that the Gemara said in the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? In Machma Sagazlan, if a property is confiscated because of this gazlan, chayiv lahamad le'sadache, you have to reimburse the owner for this. And v'aykim there, we explained before what was the case. The ach v'yachvuye, when this gazlan, he didn't steal it himself, but he went on his own and just showed this property to someone to confiscate it, even if he didn't take it by hand. You're chayiv for this. You're chayiv for because of dinah de garmi. So therefore, you paskin like him, you'll be chayiv. There's one more case which is exactly the same thing over here. There was a person, it's a little bit different actually. Okay, you know what? We'll start here from here. This is a case connected to the next few cases here. Okay.